Malachi 3:9-12. Ye have robbed me, even this whole nation. Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in my house. And prove me now herewith, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven, and pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it. And I will rebuke the devourer for your sakes, and he shall not destroy the fruits of your ground. Neither shall your vine cast her fruit before the time in the field, saith the Lord of hosts. And all nations shall call you blessed, for ye shall be a delightsome land, saith the Lord of hosts. We were having difficulty in 1998. My husband lost his job, and I was doing mission work and homeschooling. There were no funds for food. The pantry was totally empty. 4 hungry children were asking, "Mommy, I'm hungry." And I was thinking of Psalm 54, verse 4, "Behold, God is my helper." All mothers are concerned about giving enough food to their children. So I took it to the Lord in prayer. My children were small, and they expected me to have the food that they needed. So I brought them all to the table. I set the table really nice with very nice dishes, and I invited them to come to the table and thank the Lord for the food. And the oldest son said, "Mommy, I don't see any food at the table." I said, "Don't worry about it. God promised he would provide what we need to eat." And he said, "But I don't see it. Why should we thank him for it?" And I said, "Well, we'll thank him for it." And I knelt down. I just asked them to close their eyes, but I got down on the floor because I was serious. When I'm really serious on my question of the Lord or my request of him, I get on my knees to show him that really there's nothing else that I think I can do. I'm really helpless, and I'm coming to him in total confidence that he can do anything that we need done. So on my knees, I closed my eyes and I said, "Dear Father, I thank you that you keep your promises. You said in Malachi that if we give you the tithe, that there wouldn't be room enough for all the blessings." And at that moment, my cupboards were totally empty. So I told the Lord, there's a lot of room in my kitchen. And I'm thanking you that you're going to keep your promise. Thank you very much for the food. Amen. And when I opened my eyes, my firstborn son had eyes big and white. And he said, "Mommy, you prayed like that, and by tonight, the kitchen is going to be stuffed, and you're not going to be able to get inside the kitchen." And I smiled, and I said, "Good." Immediately, there was a knock on the door. I went to the door. There was the neighbor. She said, "Please, can you help me? Please, help me." I said, "What's the problem?" She said, "We have had green beans coming off our plants in our garden, and we've eaten them morning, noon, and night. And we enjoyed them at first, and now we are so sick of our green beans. Could you please help us eat some of them?" And I didn't want to look like a poor person. After all, a good doctor should have lots of food. So I put on an air of, "Sure, I'd be happy to help you." But I didn't want to look too excited, so I brought a little bucket over to their house. And the children flew into their garden, and they picked and ate. And I put the beans in the bucket, and they put the beans in their mouth. And they had one in each hand. They were taking bites of fresh beans right off the plants, which amused the neighbors. They were enjoying the whole thing. They like to be grandparents to my children. That was another answer to a promise, that God promises in the 100-fold promise that we will have 100 more mothers and fathers that means grandmothers and grandfathers, when we put God first, as we were doing in our mission services. All 4 children were traveling with me all over the world, doing mission projects, serving the sick on a volunteer basis. And God wasn't going to let us starve. Neither was he going to let us starve for affection. These people were so loving and precious to us. And they had fun, we all had fun, gathering the green beans out of their garden. And God had fun. I know he had fun. He made that little strip of bushes make more green beans than I have ever seen happen on plants. And I used to pick green beans when I was growing up as a way to earn money for schooling. And I never saw them produce so well as they did when God was feeding 2 families with it. Well, I filled that bucket and I filled another bucket. 5 gallon-sized buckets of green beans were heaped onto the table. Then I thought, we can't eat them all now. I must get some jars and can these and preserve them for winter time. I went to the neighbor who had asked me if I needed jars, and she was more than happy to give me the space filling jars that she had. While I was there, we visited a little, and it took a long time to put in the 1,000 jars into the car. Before I had gone to her house, as I was going out the door, I was met by someone looking at our for sale sign. They wanted to buy our house. But then they began looking at me and they said, "We know you. Who are you?" And I didn't want them to know that I was a doctor, so I said to them, "I'm a mother and I'm homeschooling." And they said, "We know who you are. You're our doctor. You are our doctor. And we have looked and wanted for a long time to tell you thank you for helping us discover that there was a need for surgery on the right hip that you had treated. And since that time of being in your office," they said, "we have become Seventh-day Adventists. And we are very happy. And we wanted to thank God and thank you for what you did for us." And then they looked in the house and they saw my husband looking sad, and they said, "Is there something wrong?" And I didn't want to tell them, but I told them just a tiny bit, and they just said, "Well, we can't buy your house. It's not in our ability to buy your house, so we will go look somewhere else." While I was gathering the jars, they came back. And I didn't know it. They were gone when I was driving up my driveway. And when I came in the kitchen, the children were jumping excitedly, "Mommy, Mommy, you can't get inside the kitchen." Well, there was boxes of food. This lady had come back with loads of food from the Seventh-day Adventist food stores. And the children had so much to eat. Apples and berries and vegetables. Every week the Lord provided until my husband was able to gather more funds and begin working again. There was plenty to eat. Bread and potatoes and onions. "Thou preparest before me a table in the presence of mine enemies. My cup runs over." I kept thinking about Psalm 23, verses 5 and 6. Every week someone gave us a delicious blessing. Pineapples and foods out of freezers and canned foods. All kinds of food. There wasn't room. And I was thinking of the Psalm 37:25. "I have been young and now I'm old, and I have not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging for bread." My sister gave me foods out of her garden, and I arranged them in the shape of a rainbow. I took pictures of all of God's blessings, for I don't want to forget how he helped me always provide the best, finest foods for my children. I always prayed for this. Another time, He provided food. We were out of funds again. Trouble had come to us. We were in the city of Othello. There was no food to give my children. I prayed, Lord, I need your help. I need your help. I was driving along and I found there was a huge truck that carried potatoes. It was clear full of potatoes as it began its trip, but the fog, the low-lying clouds, made it difficult for the driver to see where he was going, and he went too fast. He came to a T in the road, and suddenly there was no more road in front of him. He should have turned left, and his truck tipped over. All of those potatoes went spilling out, and diesel was on some of them. And in our country, it is against the law to gather these back up and try to sell them. It would poison people to eat a potato that had diesel on it. So I was sorting through these potatoes, and I gathered many potatoes and stored them underground in a cellar, in a pump house, where they could be useful all winter, even during the snow and the ice. We had potatoes, mashed potatoes, boiled potatoes, fried potatoes, French fries, potato chips, and we made gravy out of potatoes, and candy out of potatoes, and cookies out of potatoes, and bread out of potatoes, everything, any possible way I could think of using potatoes. We had enough. It was like manna. There was so much always for our food throughout the winter. So I call that our potato manna gift from heaven. Just like the manna came early in the morning for the Israelites. It melted away by the time the day started. Those potatoes were being taken by other people, and I was quick to gather them into my car. I took them home and went back for more, and it was a good thing because many other people were gathering the potatoes. Another kind of manna is our spiritual food. If we gather it early in the morning, there will be no interruption that will take away that special manna for our lives. God always provides for our needs more abundantly than we ever ask or think.